I have been repeating everywhere that nobody is in politics who is a Father Christmas.
Welcome to a special edition of Election Desk here on GhanaWeb TV. My name is Attrition. We're speaking with the majority leader in Parliament. He's also the member of Parliament for Swame, Honorable Se J. Mensa Bonsu. Honorable, so welcome to GhanaWeb TV.
Thank you for having me.
So we would have Honorable give us a better understanding of, first of all, what it is GhanaWeb reported on something the majority leader said, and which we are getting a better understanding of. So, Honorable, please help us understand what it is we misreported.
I think that I was painting a picture of the state of the economy. NPP officers, the party officers, polling station executives and constituency executives had met to listen to one of the presidential hopefuls who is engaged in water testing, who had come to my constituency. So I was talking to them and I was relating to, the state of the economy. And I think I related to what President Nkommo did, what Mills Mahama did, and also what Akufo-Addo did in his first term. And I said when Akufo was leaving, the growth in the economy as captured by the usual standard of assessment, GDP, inflation, interest rates, and so on, international reserves, that we're doing quite well. Okay. Yet in spite of that, it was difficult to break the 8. Because a few things, and the fact also that party faithfuls did not work hard enough. We got a bit complacent. Then I related to the era of President Mahama, when he succeeded Mills and won another term for the NDC. Dunso had afflicted us. And yet, in 2015, when the growth of the economy registered about 2.2%, which was the worst growth in 30 years until that time. Now, the next level, 2016, they managed to grow the economy from the 2.2 to 3.4%. Okay. And I was just saying that increment in the growth rate, right, perhaps caused John Mahama to be complacent, which was why, as the president and presidential candidate who mounts a political platform, instead of addressing the challenges of the economy and talking to Ghanaians who were listening to him, voters, about what it was that he was going to do to escalate growth, he was behaving like, excuse my language, but the language that I used, that he was like a concert party was playing out. And so he mounted a political party platform, and then he'll be telling the listeners, the voters, say mekase idibia, munkase idibi keke. The president of the republic, a presidential candidate, he had gotten complacent, right? So I was saying to us that 2017, 2020, we all saw what we're doing. The first 3 years of Akufo-Addo's regime, doubling overnight the growth in the economy, averaging 7%, when John Mahama averaged 2.8% in his last 3 years. We averaged 7% in the first 3 years of Akufo-Addo's regime. Enter COVID, enter the Soviet-Ukraine imbroglio, and the economy is shattered. We're now coming up. So I was saying that our economy now is not in the state of Akufo-Addo's first stanza. So we need to get out there and seriously canvass, because those of them who had gone to listen to Kennedy Agyapong, who had told them that he was coming at 2:30, the polling station agents, they had to wait from 2:30 to 5 o'clock when Agyapong came. 2.5 hours sitting in limbo just to listen to a presidential candidate. I was asking them, how many of you the whole year has spent 2.5 years going from house to house to canvass for votes for the party? None of them. And yet, you have patience to come and listen to one person, 2.5 years. Sit down. So I was saying that they should have that same zeal to go out there and work for the party. And I think it is the point that I made about John Mohammed's administration growing from 2.2 to 3.4 that they had climbed up and they had gotten complacent. And that small portion that I said is what was reported on by GhanaWeb.
Okay.
So it was completely taken out of context.
All right. Now that we have a better understanding of what you said and what you communicated, you are not returning to Parliament in 2025?
Well, I have said so. And my party people, the national executives, and the regional executives in the region, all manner of people are giving me problems. They say they wouldn't listen. But I've stated my case.
And it's one you're going to stand by?
Just 3 days ago, I was at Nkommo Wo.
Okay.
And the regional chairman was saying that I should stop saying that the party has not agreed, and so I shouldn't ever say this anywhere again. And is it the national organizer? Okay. One of them who was there was also insisting that the party should give me a coast is clear signal before I'm able to come out to say that I'm not contesting again. But we are where we are.
Okay. and now that it seems like this will be the roadmap for you going forward, what will be next for you after Parliament?
So many things to do. So many things to do. I have said that I'm leaving Parliament, but I'm not leaving the political terrain. I'll be there wherever I find myself, to be dictated by the party, to be dictated by what provision that God has for me. And I also have a few things doing. I think I will have much more time if I'm not inundated with activity as I am now, to perhaps think through a lot of things that have happened in my life and begin to write, some books about myself, about Parliament, and about events that I have engaged in the course of my life on this earth.
Wonderful. You have spoken a lot about attrition in Parliament. You live in Parliament. How do you see that, and especially also on the back of the recent election of the opposition NDC, some big names actually fell. Talk to us about this issue of attrition in Parliament. You live in as well.
Well, I've sounded to leave on my own, okay, because I've been here for a while, and I think increasingly circumstances are changing for us as Ghanaians, okay, as political parties, and the parties must do serious introspection, because the way we are going is not helpful to the cause of democracy. It's not helpful to the cause of democracy. We just alluded to some big names in the NDC who've lost elections. Parliament is going to lose Dr. Kwabena.
Yes.
A very experienced member of Parliament, a very knowledgeable person, at least in the area of energy. Is one of the brains in Parliament with respect to energy matters. When he speaks, we listen. When he critiques programs and projects, we all listen to improve the development agenda for this nation. We are going to lose him. And I heard what went on in his own backyard. No malice to whoever is going to replace him. Sometimes, occasionally, you may have one or two people who may come up first time and show great potential. But building the capacity of a member of Parliament does not take one term, not even 2 terms. You hear about people out there, members of Parliament, who outside Parliament are making waves.
Okay.
They come to Parliament, their performance in Parliament, we don't hear about them. That is regarding the real responsibilities of members of Parliament here in Parliament, the representational functions in particular, legislative functions, when we are making laws, power of purse functions of Parliament, discharging our oversight responsibilities. The 4 key functions of members of Parliament. Many of them, you step out. You are on radio stations, television stations, but come to the house, the chamber, where business is transacted. You don't hear their voices. So I'm saying that some people operate outside the house, better outside the house than in the house. But all in all, as I've said, even those of them who show potentials, you need to build their capacities and nurture them. And so you are going to lose Comrade Donko. You're going to lose ABF Husseini.
Yes.
Bawa, you know, sometimes he makes a lot of noise. You know, but when he gets serious, he's also he can communicate intelligently in the house, right? So losing those people it should be a worry for us as Parliament and for us as an emerging democracy. You know, so Parliament as the second arm of government happens to be the weakest among the 3 arms of government. And it's no thanks to the internal organization of the political parties. People say that, oh, but we should be democratic. Who says that consensus building is not part of democracy? Who says that? Look, our constitution provides in Article 55 that the internal organization of political parties shall conform to democratic principles, right?
Yes.
When it comes to the composition of the national executives of a political party, the Constitution provides that they should be chosen from all regions of the country. The same Constitution. It doesn't say that they should be elected. It says they should be chosen. And choosing people, yes, it includes the vehicle of election. It includes the vehicle of acclamation or just appointing them. You are choosing them. So we should not just think that democracy means at every turn there should be elections. Because those of them that we are following, the established democracies in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in Germany, wherever, they don't submit to that. At the end of the term of any parliament, they don't go through the rigors that we go through. Why? Because everywhere that democracy is parliamentary democracy is entrenched, there's a role for the leadership of the caucus to assess the performance of the members of parliament. And then, where there are difficulties relating to individuals, they would be subjecting them to corrective measures. After maybe 4 years, if the person is stiff-necked, doesn't want to listen to anybody, he will not attend parliament. When you need him for voting, he will not come. When he needs to contribute, you don't find him. You want to pass him through some capacity building exercises, he doesn't submit himself. Then the leadership would submit the name of that person to the National Party. That let's have a replacement. And even there, when they have to replace, it's not just a small group of people who go and then come and cast their votes. And people are standing in corners saying that, oh, what's the size of this envelope that the man is bringing? What's the drink that he's bringing?
It's interesting you talk about money now. I want to just draw you back a little. Money and politics, which has been a big conversation, the bigger one around corruption. Is this something that is going to do you think it's something that worries the kind of democracy that we...
It does. I have been repeating everywhere that nobody is in politics who is a Father Christmas. If the person gives you something, whether by way of drink, by way of cola, by way of some envelope, which can translate into money. Or if it's a drink, he uses money to buy the drink. If it's cola, he uses money to buy the cola. If it's physical money, of course, you should know that that person is not a Father Christmas. So when he comes to Parliament and his party wins and you give him a responsibility, where he's able to award contracts, for instance, corners will be cut. There are no two ways about that. And the nation will not have value for money. And people begin to complain, oh, politicians, no more corrupt. But we are cultivating corruption at the very outset. People coming in. So it's dangerous, because if you're not careful, very soon, our parliament will be taken over by people with fat wallets.
How do we solve this?
The way of solving it is for the political parties. It's for them to look at their constitutions again, especially MPP and DC. And in these elections, everybody was talking about monies that were on display. I'm not sure that I belong to the MPP. Let's look up to our maker and admit that we also do the same. And especially when the NDC have finished their own, ahead of time. Maybe when it comes to the turn of the MPP, it may be worse. Especially with you as a ruling party. It may be worse. How do you stop that? You require the parties to do serious introspection and look at their constitutions again. Other than that, if it continues, I shudder to think of what will happen in the next succeeding 2-3 elections. It may be worse. Don't forget, in 2016, we have not seen the publication from CDD in respect of the 2020 elections. Yes. But don't forget that in 2016, the report that they did suggested that the average expenditure by the typical parliamentary candidate to get himself herself in parliament was in the region of $600,000. $600,000. That was 2016. As I've said, they've not done their publication, their research and publication for 2020. We are going to 2024. As things are shaping up, if we are not careful, we may be talking nothing less than maybe 1 million. What is going to be the salary 4 years for that person who enters parliament? I mean, and if he borrowed to come, how does he, pay back his benefactors or wherever he borrowed from?
I want to take you back a little as well, because you spoke about the non-intention to come back to parliament and all the conversations from your party and some of the leadership. This issue about where allegiance is for members of parliament, where should the allegiance be? Is it to their constituents, to the party? Which is the bigger allegiance? Where should it be?
Well, you came to parliament on the wings of a political party. The party has a manifesto. The party has a vision that you bought into, for which reason the party then adopted you to float on their wings to canvass for support from the constituency. And then you came to parliament, right? Perhaps when you go down to the constituencies and do some research about the quality of materials that political parties are sponsoring, it may turn out that if you do personality analysis of the contestants, NPP, NDC, CPP, PNC, whatever, even some independent candidates, you may see that maybe some candidates who belong to the non-winning parties may be better in terms of professional qualification, in terms of competence, having worked in other endeavors and so on, perhaps the candidates who didn't win may be better one-on-one than the candidate who won. But he won because of the party that the people believe in.
Okay.
So you see, the party carries a lot of influence, a lot of weight in the constituencies, right? So as I'm saying, the constituents who vote for you, okay, but the party matters at the constituency.
So how do you balance that?
Well, you must balance it by way of you represent the constituency. Mm-hmm. You see, our concept of democracy is not delegational for the members of parliament. You are not a delegate. You are a representative. There are two concepts of, parliamentary democracy. One is representational, one is delegational. Okay. The one with delegational often is now becoming a bit anachronistic, but it used to be with the communist regimes. Those were delegational. They were delegates. So if you go, you are required to speak for the interests of the people who sent you there. If you don't, they will bring you out. So if the Communist Party decides that no, you are not singing the tune of the Communist Party, they will bring you out. You are a delegate, okay, and bring somebody else. But here, you are a representative. So you listen to them, the broad section of the people that you represent. This is the interest of the constituency. You carry it. And that is why when you are here, because you are not a delegate, you are a representative. I was, carried to parliament on the wings of the New Patriotic Party, and I represent Swami. Okay. But it's the reason why when something happens at Navrongo, I'm able to stand here and speak to it. Because once you get elected, you cease to represent just the constituency, but the entirety of the country, right? So that's the difference. And that should tell you where your allegiance should lie. I mean, it's a careful balance of satisfying the interests of the political party and also the constituency.
All right. We'll just return shortly after this break, and then we'll continue our conversation with the majority leader here on GhanaWeb Election Desk.
Now, Susu sang quite dear one ton and be a man in quite baby.
Mommy, you first can see about Kotoso. No, Mammy, I could concern. Pipoga, send me sick from Lemonade Finance and let me £10.
Lemonade Finance.
Say they're sending money back home from UK, Canada, and now US. I accepted a instant charges. Exchange waiting so the unbeatable. Resume promo code no Dr. Likey. Nenya £10, $10, and now $10 What first transaction? What is send this car coffee no? Dialogue to Lemon and Finance.
We're still here with the majority leader and member of parliament for Swami, also the minister for parliamentary affairs, as well as one of the longest serving MPs in Ghana's parliament, the Honorable Osechi Mensah Bonsu. Honorable, now there is also the bigger conversation about endorsements. We recently saw the news about you endorsing the MP for Asin Central. Is that really what it is?
No, I never endorsed Kennedy Agyapong, but I commended him. You see, we are having an admixture of presidential and parliamentary systems. In the strict presidential system, the US is the flagship of presidential systems in the world, as you do know. Yes. And in the US, before you become the president, you ought to have maybe been a governor of a state or a legislator belonging to the House of Reps or a senator, both of them legislators, or maybe a vice president. Mm-hmm. These three categories of people are the people who become presidents. Now, I think a couple of years ago, the US, after all this long history of having these three classes of people as their presidents, decided to change track a bit. And they brought in Donald Trump, who had no experience in parliament. He had no experience as a governor. He had no experience as a former vice president. He was just a businessman. So he paraded himself. And perhaps the people were tired of their own conventions and practices and wanted to change track a bit. They voted for him. So when Ken came to my constituency, I was saying, I related to these facts and said that he is a long-serving member of parliament. Indeed, on my side, that's the NPP side, I'm the longest serving, as you have alluded to. But immediately after me, that's the next succeeding generation includes, and there are just two of them who came in 2001. Kennedy Agyapong himself and Katie Hammond. Okay. They are 6-term members of parliament, continuously. So I was relating to that and saying that he's a long-serving member of parliament, and he's gathered some experience as a parliamentarian. And that being the case, he qualifies to contest as a presidential candidate, alluding to the conventions and practices in the US. And I said, just like Donald Trump, a businessman, became a president, I said, well, in Ghana here, his entrepreneurship is also acclaimed. He's a businessman. So if you want a businessman, again, he qualifies. So I said, on these two legs, Ken Agyapong qualifies to contest. That's all that I said. Even as far as I am concerned, I even told them, but as far as my vote is concerned, Ken knows where I stand. So that's how we left it. And I was surprised to see that stories were, out there saying that I had endorsed Kennedy Agyapong. I commended him, and even alluded to his benevolence, and said to the people that there was one school that I constructed at Suame. And I was telling them for the first time, and when we had difficulties raising money to do it, it was who loaned us 200 million at the time. Now, the situation will be about 20,000. After we had done one and we had not been paid, the contractor had not been paid, and the contractor was looking for money to begin the second one, I went to Ken, who gave a loan to the contractor through me, and afterwards he was paid back. So I related to that, but that is no, and that is not an endorsement.
We'll just do some
a recommendation.
Okay, we'll just do some quick questions. First of all, the election of speaker. You have spoken about this before. Should the election of a speaker come from within Parliament or from without Parliament? What's your understanding, or what do you think should be the way forward on that?
I think that we, as a nation, we should brainstorm on that. Okay. In the entirety of Africa, I think Ghana is the only country that is practicing that as the country where the speaker is not a member of parliament. In the entire world, I think there are only 5 other cases where speakers are not members of parliament, right? And whether it's been inuring to the growth of parliament is another matter, right? When somebody comes from outside and is made a speaker, and when he finishes, he walks out, he walks away. Versus where you have a member of parliament elected by his own peers as a speaker. When he loses out, he comes back to parliament and is a member of parliament. With that, the growth of parliament is very dear to his heart, right? So I have raised this issue that we should look at the matter very well. But if we have to do that, it will involve a constitutional amendment. Because the Constitution that so proposes, and we cannot just wish it away. You may have to amend the Constitution.
You're a member of the executive. Do you think that the president possesses too much powers, or will I say too much? What's the powers of the president? Do you think it's just too much?
Well, I think that the Constitution vests tremendous powers in the president. There are no two ways about it. And I think on an occasion when I gave a lecture at KNUST, I said we're creating a constitutional monarch, right? The checks and balances that we need to exercise, especially in a situation where Parliament that should be exercising the oversight is considerably weakened by our own actions and inactions, especially what is happening and what happened just last Saturday. Just throwing out a lot of the experienced hands. Certainly not the best to the growth of Parliament. It weakens Parliament.
Okay.
And if Parliament is weakened, the executive will be happy. I mean, I'm not talking about the Kufado. I'm talking about the system.
Okay.
Every executive, I mean, the president is elected on account, supposedly, of his manifesto. So when he comes to office, he's in a hurry to implement his manifesto promises and pledges. But the path may be strewn with thorns and thistles. And human as we all are, we need a strong legislature to be, ensuring that whatever the president does is right for the country. And if Parliament is weak, you'll not be able to do that. It's the reason why some people are also saying, and I believe in that cause anyway, that the time has come for us to decouple the legislature from the executive,
Okay.
right? So that the president has his own authority to appoint ministers from outside Parliament. And we're able to develop career members of Parliament who would then be able to have the authority to stand up to the executive, where they are going around to say that no, this is not right.
Then it's a clear distinction of separation of powers.
Well, in our context, I would say so.
Okay.
Even though it's the way we are managing our affairs, because I believe in much more in Westminster system of democracy than the presidential system.
Okay.
I believe in that. And yet, in the Westminster system, all ministers come from Parliament, and yet they are able to work.
Okay.
Why? Because in the Westminster system, before you become a minister, would have perhaps served on a committee for a very long time. 2 times, 3 times, your party is in opposition, you rise to become the shadow minister of finance, the shadow minister of maybe lands and forestry, of energy. You hone your skills such that by the time your party wins, there's nothing at the ministry that you don't know. That's why they are called shadow ministers. So almost automatically, when their party wins, then the shadow minister of finance becomes the finance minister. The shadow minister for defense becomes the defense minister. He knows everything. He may not be a technocrat, but he learned everything, right? That improves governance. Okay. In the straight presidential system, the president appoints ministers from outside. He appoints technocrats who then are vetted by Parliament, and they are given the green light to go and function. So if somebody is not functioning effectively, the president wants to, take him out of the ministry, he goes. There's no case for reshuffling in the presidential system.
Okay.
You are given a portfolio, you are vetted for that. If you don't perform, another person comes in. And there's that value addition. Here, because of the admixture, somebody comes to Parliament, it's a first timer, he has not served on a committee, any committee before, is not a technocrat, and he comes, he's appointed to a ministry. You are vetting the person, he's telling you, I'm a new person, you ask him rudimentary questions. Let me go and I will learn. Learn what? Learn what?
All right.
Whereas the Constitution provides that you as the minister should be evolving policies for the president. Now the person that you are vetting, who should assist the president to evolve policy for the ministry, is telling you at the committee level that let me go, I will learn. When is he going to learn? In order to position himself to evolve policies to enrich the administration of governance. So if we go presidential, let's go presidential, strict presidential, and then be in a position, as I said, to grow parliament and grow parliamentarians, to develop career parliamentarians. Other than that, let's go Westminster, because Westminster, apart from everything, is also much, much less expensive than the presidential system.
All right. Now, the former President John Mahama was on a tour recently and talked about scrapping the ex-gratia. He even dared your party to actually make a position on that. Is that something you subscribe to?
I think that what John is saying, former president, should be one of the things that we should have a national conversation on. I personally have had some discussion with him on that. Indeed, in 2020, in the electioneering campaign time, he raised this. This is not the first time he's talking about that. In 2020, he raised it and said he was going to, when he was elected, he was going to do away with it. He was going to cancel it. I told him, with the greatest respect, that he didn't know what he was talking about. Because the gratuity is part of the chapter on the executive. And the whole chapter on the executive in the Constitution is entrenched. So I can't wake up one day to say that I've cancelled it. So I told him. Then he asked me that, this is behind the curtain. And I said, so what is it? I said, no. If it's part of a holistic review of the Constitution, I will subscribe to it. But you going out on a political platform to say that you're going to cancel it, how are you going to cancel it? Are you going to have a referendum just on Ex-gratia? What would be the cost involved in that? In any event, if you are doing away with the gratuity, then necessarily you may have to up the levels of the salary of members of parliament, right? And all those officers who come under Article 71. So let's weigh the issue very critically, assess it, and if you have to move forward as a nation, we can come to some determination on that. But I'm saying that it should be part of the broad agenda of constitutional review. I believe in that we should review our constitution. It should be part of it, not the only thing to have a referendum on.
I just have a final question. Scorecard of 10, mark the Akufo-Addo government.
In respect of what?
Economy.
Well, you all know where we are, COVID, and as I said, the Russian-Ukrainian imbroglio. So, yes, we went down. But the good thing is that we are climbing up. And if you look at the performance of GDP in 2021, 2022, you see that we are climbing up gradually. One hopes that with the discussions with the IMF being concluded now, by the close of the year, excuse me, by the close of the year, it will reflect in the growth of the economy, and into 2024, it will be better. For me, if you want to do any objective assessment of the performance of Akufo-Addo's regime, it should be the first 3 years when COVID had not struck. That was a force majeure that was never anticipated by any country.
Okay.
Right? And maybe one would say that what mechanisms that we employ to fight it, perhaps at the time we over-exaggerated our strength a bit. Right? So following after that, we have been hardest hit. Plus the fact that our dealings with Ukraine in many areas, the importation of fertilizer, wheat importation, flour importation, cement, steel products, and even the scholarship that they were awarding our students. Our partnership with Ukraine was a huge partnership that weighed grossly in our favor. So the economy got shattered by all these forces. But as I'm saying, we're climbing up, and I believe that we'll get there.
Right. That's the majority leader, the Member of Parliament for Swami, and also Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, the Honorable Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu. Thank you very much for joining us on GhanaWeb Election Desk. My name is Echi Atisu.